Dear Ryan, can you make anti-Asian hate stop? I don't even know where to start with this one. Yeah, sure, everybody's talking about it right now, which is a good thing because it's been in the news cycles recently. But this is something we all saw coming like a year ago, right? My last YouTube video, which was like a year ago, was literally about this topic. But suddenly it's being brought up, which I think is a good thing. Regardless, anti-Asian racism is not going to be solved overnight, and it's going to be a very long time before anything gets actually solved. But luckily, I think there's a bunch of my friends who actually have some really good ideas, so check it out.
First, don't let anyone tell you that racism towards Asians doesn't exist. Hate crimes and attacks on Asian Americans have skyrocketed this past year due to xenophobia and bigots trying to blame us for the pandemic.
People are getting spit on, harassed, even killed in the street, just grocery shopping or taking a walk around the neighborhood. Now, I don't need to, nor do I want to show you the countless videos that are piling up every day showing the violence towards us and especially our elders.
It's heartbreaking and it's unacceptable, and yet many people still deny that this is a problem.
And it's not just happening in the US, it's happening all around the world. Anti-Asian sentiment is growing exponentially, and people are attacking Asians using them as scapegoats.
And this is something that we see throughout history. In the late 1800s, they blamed Chinese workers for bringing disease and stealing everyone's jobs. They called that the Yellow Peril. The Page Act even banned Chinese women from straight up entering the United States.
Soon after, the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed to ban all Chinese immigration. It's still the only piece of US legislation to ban a specific ethnic or national group from entering the US. And it wasn't lifted until 1943, 60 years later.
Speaking of the 1940s, in 1942, Japanese American US citizens were put in internment camps because they were considered security risks after the attacks on Pearl Harbor.
Men in these camps even signed up to fight for the US Army to prove their loyalty, only to be met with racism and discrimination upon returning home. These camps displaced, racially targeted, and uprooted over 100,000 Japanese Americans, affecting generations to come.
During the Great Depression of the 1930s, Filipino farm workers who recently immigrated to the US were the main labor force, but used as scapegoats during the difficult economic times.
Their labor camps were bombed, and the farmers faced persecution and imprisonment, all supported by local law enforcement.
In 1987, during a time when Japanese automakers were entering the US, Vincent Chen, an innocent Chinese American man, was beaten to death right before his wedding by resentful white American auto workers who had just been laid off. The killers were ordered to pay just $3,000, and they never served any jail time.
For decades, Hollywood has perpetuated detrimental images of hypersexualized and docile Asian women and emasculated subservient Asian men, teaching Americans through media that we are subhuman.
After the events that took place on 9/11, hate crimes towards South Asians, specifically Sikhs, surged throughout the country.
This led to shootings at gurdwaras, vandalism, burning of mosques, and many other acts of Islamophobia.
And just a month ago, 6 Asian women were murdered by a mass shooter in Atlanta who claims he simply had a sex addiction and bad day.
This is just a sample of what the greater Asian community has endured in this country, and for decades, our cries have barely made the headlines. Even after a whole year of rising hate crimes, mainstream America is just now catching up.
Our immigrant parents taught us to stay silent and keep our heads down, but we're grown up now, and we're done staying silent. We have to speak up for ourselves and for them.
We have a powerful collective voice, and we can use that in impactful ways. It starts with amplifying our stories and our needs.
Spreading awareness is the first step, so whether you're Asian or not, learn about what's happening and don't be afraid to share it with others.
Because our histories and struggles in this country have been long ignored and even erased. It's time to change that.
Next is about going beyond hashtags, leaving comments, and sharing on our IG stories. Now we have to get involved with grassroots organizations that support neighborhoods and local initiatives, because when we move together, we can make big changes.
So, in the spirit of the many Asian American activists who have come before us, we are coming together for community walking groups, powerful marches, and fundraisers of monetary support for victims. This real-world impact needs to keep going. Don't get comfortable, because this isn't a problem that's going to end anytime soon.
And also, we have to learn to protect ourselves. We are the first ones responsible for our own safety. So make sure you stay alert, be aware, not just for you, but for those around you and for those that you care. Because racism will continue if it is met without consequence. So if anything that ever comes your way makes you feel uncomfortable, make sure you put a stop to it.
Finally, we must all recognize that each of us plays a different role in our progress forward. Not everyone is a marcher or a fighter. Some of us will contribute as healers and peacemakers.
Some will inspire through creative works. Others will do the work in politics and corporate systems. We must acknowledge that everyone contributes in different ways, so don't feel like you have to do it all.
And as we move, as we find our roles, what we will not do is tear down our own community. We have a common goal, and that is to combat anti-Asian racism. What we will not do is tear down other communities of color to uplift ourselves. We have a common goal of equality and dispelling hate towards all people. Others generalizing our entire race is the root of the problem we're in. So let us not generalize others in the same way.
Together, through solidarity within ourselves and with our allies, is how we make progress. It's how we even begin to stop Asian hate.
This is a turning point for us as Asians in this country and around the world. And while there have been many activists before us blazing trails, what lies ahead now is completely uncharted territory. But we encourage us all to stay united and stay strong for each other and especially for our elders. Please pass along this video to not only share our struggles and our history, but to also share our strengths and continue supporting Asian nonprofits, Asian businesses, creators, and voices. Thank you.